All right, welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive.
Always a pleasure.
This time, we're going to try to take a crack at a mystery that has been puzzling folks for over 20 years.
Sounds intriguing.
You bet it is. We got some great sources from our listeners this time. Excerpts from Unsolved Mysteries.
A classic.
Yeah, a Wikipedia article, and even a YouTube video from the channel.
And then they were gone.
Okay, covering all the bases.
Absolutely, and all about the vanishing of Leah Roberts.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of this one. This is a strange case.
Very strange case. Now, we both know the basics, right? Leah, 23 years old, sets off on a cross-country road trip inspired by Jack Kerouac.
Right. Seems straightforward so far.
Yeah, but then her Jeep is found wrecked, but Leah is totally gone, no trace of her in the vehicle at all.
Yeah, that's where things take a turn.
Yeah, and what I think is really strange is that her Jeep was found 9 days after she last contacted her family.
9 days.
9 days.
Wow.
That's a long time for a car to sit unnoticed, especially after a crash like that.
Yeah, especially in that condition. So what are your initial thoughts on that?
Well, it's definitely a very curious detail if the crash was staged. Like, some of the evidence suggests that 9-day gap could be significant, right? I mean, it could give somebody ample time to, manipulate the scene, maybe move Leah to a different location.
Okay, so let's rewind a bit because you mentioned staged. The Unsolved Mysteries episode mentioned blankets that were found draped over the broken windows of the Jeep.
Oh, wow.
It's almost like someone was using it as a shelter after the crash. What do you make of that?
Well, that's a theory that kind of gets floated around a lot with this case.
Yeah.
But it's important to remember that there was no blood, no signs of injury inside the Jeep at all,
Right.
which is really unusual for a crash that violent.
Right.
Plus, all of her belongings, cash, jewelry, everything was left untouched. If somebody was using the Jeep as a shelter, wouldn't they have grabbed something? Makes you wonder if robbery was ever even a possibility.
That's true. It's almost as if whoever staged this, if it was staged, wanted to make it look like an accident, but at the same time preserve her belongings.
Yeah, that's a good point. Very interesting.
Yeah, and speaking of belongings, there's that cryptic note that Leah left for her roommate. It mentions Kerouac in this line, "I'm not suicidal, I'm the opposite." Do you think that gives us any clues, or is it just adding to the mystery?
Well, that note, it's definitely ambiguous.
Yeah.
And it definitely fuels a lot of speculation. On the one hand, it could suggest she wanted some kind of radical change, right? Aligning with that whole Kerouac Dharma bums thing. Maybe even a planned disappearance.
Right.
But on the other hand, it could just be a red herring, a way to mislead investigators.
Okay, that's a good point. But it makes me wonder if she did want to just disappear, why choose such a dramatic way to do it?
Yeah.
Why stage a car crash? Wouldn't it be easier to just vanish?
That's true. Maybe she wanted to create a more definitive break,
Right.
a really clear marker between her old life and whatever this new life was going to be. Or it could be that the crash wasn't part of the plan at all.
Okay.
Maybe something happened during her trip that forced her to change course.
Interesting. Okay, so we've got this staged crash, this cryptic note, and a missing person. And then investigators find a movie ticket stub that puts Leah at a showing of American Beauty in Bellingham, Washington, just hours before her Jeep was found.
Oh, wow.
What's the significance of that, if any?
Well, for one, it gives us a really solid data point, places Leah in a very specific location at a specific time,
Yeah.
which is absolutely crucial for a missing person case. It also leads us to these two guys who claim to have talked to her at a restaurant right near the theater.
Oh, yeah, that detail, that really stuck with me from the Unsolved Mysteries episode.
Oh, yeah.
They gave conflicting accounts of her leaving the restaurant. One said she left alone. The other insisted she left with some guy named Barry.
Barry.
Yeah, Barry.
And if Barry was there, why didn't anyone else see him?
Exactly. It's very strange.
Yeah. It's a great question, isn't it? Was he just a phantom, just blending into the background? Or was the guy who reported him just mistaken?
Yeah.
Or did he maybe have some other reason for adding Barry to the mix?
Right. It's weird. Despite all these leads, we still haven't really found anything concrete.
Yeah, it's true.
It's like solving a puzzle with half the pieces missing.
Yeah, but then there's this other piece of the puzzle that just doesn't quite fit. Leah's mother's engagement ring,
Oh, right.
which was found tucked under the floor mat of her Jeep.
Yeah.
And, according to her friends, Leah never took that ring off. So why leave it behind in such a strange place?
Maybe it was a sign, a way to let her family know she was still out there somewhere.
It's possible, or it could be another misdirection trying to make investigators think she was still alive and planning to come back.
Right.
It just adds another layer of complexity to an already really perplexing case.
Absolutely. Every new piece of information seems to just raise more questions than it answers.
Well, that's the nature of a good mystery, isn't it? The more you dig, the deeper the rabbit hole
And
goes.
this rabbit hole goes pretty deep.
It certainly does. It's funny, going through these sources, I can't help but think about how ironic it is that Leah was so fascinated by Kerouac.
Oh, yeah. How so?
Well, his writing, it kind of romanticizes freedom and spontaneity, right?
Hmm.
But it also kind of explores those, like, darker sides of that lifestyle,
Yeah,
Isolation, disillusionment.
right. Makes you wonder if Leah was really ready for what the open road could actually be like.
Exactly. Was she just chasing this, like, romanticized ideal, or was there something more there?
Something deeper driving her, yeah.
Yeah. And going back to her note that I'm not suicidal, I'm the opposite line.
Oh, right.
It could suggest maybe she wanted some kind of total transformation, a
Yeah.
clean break from her past, but was that break something she chose, or was it forced on her?
Which brings us back to that tampered engine.
Oh, yeah.
The YouTube video you shared, when you did some detail about the wire that was cut, it seems like whoever did that had to have some serious mechanical knowledge.
Absolutely. This wasn't just some random act of vandalism.
Right.
It was very deliberate, very precise.
Yeah.
It suggests a level of premeditation that's pretty unsettling.
Okay, so do we think Leah could have done this herself? Did she even have the skills?
It's possible, but it's pretty unlikely. There's nothing in any of these sources that suggests Leah had any experience with mechanics.
Okay.
And even if she did, why go through all that trouble to stage a crash?
Right.
I mean, wouldn't it have been easier to just disappear?
Unless the crash wasn't a part of the plan at all.
Okay, I'll bite.
What if something happened during her trip that made her have to change course?
It's possible, but that still doesn't explain the tampered engine.
Right.
Someone went to a lot of trouble to make it look like an accident.
Okay, so let's say for the sake of argument that someone else was involved, someone with the skills to mess with the Jeep. Could it have been that mechanic she met at the restaurant? The one with the conflicting story about Barry?
Could be, but remember the police never actually released the results of that DNA analysis?
Right.
So even if they did find a match, we wouldn't know for sure.
That's true, and that lack of information is so frustrating. Feels like a huge piece of the puzzle is just missing.
Definitely.
But what about Barry? Could he be the key to this whole thing?
Potentially.
The guy who claimed to have seen Leah leave with him was so specific in his description.
Right.
It's hard to believe he just made it up.
That's true, but he also could have been mistaken.
Yeah.
Or just misremembering certain details. It was a busy restaurant. Eyewitnesses aren't always the most reliable.
I know. You know what? What if Barry was someone she met online?
Online.
Yeah, like in some kind of chat room or forum about Kerouac's work.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, this was the early days of the internet, and online communities were really starting to take off.
Oh, that's a good point. Would it explain why no one else seems to remember seeing him? Maybe he was someone outside of her normal social circles.
Yeah, someone she only knew from online.
Yeah, but that would make the investigation so much more complicated.
Oh, for sure. Can you imagine trying to track someone down back then with only like a screen name or something?
Exactly. It'd be like looking for a ghost.
Right.
And then there's the question of motive. If Barry was involved, what was his role in all of this? Was he a willing participant, or was he maybe forced into it somehow?
Oh, I didn't even think about that. And what about her cat, Bia? It barely even gets mentioned in these sources.
That is interesting.
If Leah was planning to disappear, wouldn't she have taken Bia with her? I mean, they were inseparable.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense for her to just abandon her cat, especially if she was going to start this whole new life.
Unless something happened suddenly and she couldn't make arrangements.
Maybe.
Unless she let Bia go free.
What do you mean?
Like, released her into the wild. Maybe she thought Bia would be better off fending for herself than being left behind.
Oh, it's heartbreaking to think about, but I guess it's possible. Yeah. Knowing how much Leah loved Bea, it just seems so out of character for her.
I know. Going through all of this, I keep thinking about Leah's state of mind.
Yeah.
I mean, she was dealing with the loss of her dad, the stress of college, and then sets off on this road trip by herself, inspired by a writer who was, known for a pretty unconventional lifestyle.
It's a lot to process.
It really is. Makes you wonder if maybe she was looking for some kind of solace in Kerouac's work,
Yeah.
or she was trying to escape something, even herself.
It's a good question.
And that takes us right back to the note.
That note, yeah.
I'm not suicidal, I'm the opposite. It's just so open-ended.
Right. What does she mean by that?
Was she rejecting the idea of suicide? Or was she embracing something totally new? A new identity, a new purpose? Who knows?
It's the question that keeps everyone guessing. Investigators, online sleuths, everyone.
Was it a cry for help? A declaration of independence? Or was it all just a carefully constructed lie?
Tough to say.
Whatever it was, it's obvious Leah was at a crossroads in her life. And that road trip, that journey into the unknown, it seems to have taken her further than anyone could imagine.
It's like she stepped right into one of Kerouac's novels,
And just vanished into thin air.
leaving all of us to try and figure out what happened.
To decipher the story she left behind.
And then there's that other really unsettling detail.
What's that?
In 2014, remember, a mummified body was found,
Oh, yeah.
not far from where they found Leah's Jeep.
Oh,
And get this, it had a metal rod in its right femur.
just like Leah.
Yeah, just like Leah.
That's a pretty crazy coincidence.
It is. It's a very eerie detail.
Yeah, especially with the timing and location.
It's tempting to connect the two, right?
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, DNA testing revealed that the remains were male.
Ah, so not Leah.
Right, but the fact that her body's never been found, well,
It keeps the door open, I guess.
it does, to all sorts of possibilities.
So what does it all mean?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Oh, I guess so.
Did Leah orchestrate her own vanishing?
Maybe she was trying to build a new life inspired by Kerouac, off the grid.
Maybe. Or was she the victim of something more sinister?
Maybe her story ends tragically somewhere in the wilderness of Washington state.
It's hard to say.
All we can really do is speculate.
Right, but that's part of what makes this case so fascinating.
Definitely keeps you thinking.
It does. There's just so many unanswered questions.
Well, this has been another incredible deep dive.
Yeah, a real head-scratcher.
A mystery that continues to baffle. We may never know the truth about what happened to Leah Roberts.
That's true.
But the search for answers, well, it continues.
It always does.
Thank you so much for taking us through this.
It's my pleasure. Always happy to delve into these mysteries.
And thank you all for listening to another deep dive. Make sure you check out the links in the show notes for more information.
And let us know what you think.
Yeah, send us your theories. We'd love to hear them.
Always up for a good discussion.
Until next time, keep diving.